Welcome to We Sing the Bass Electric, a podcast for bass lovers and music enthusiasts of all genres. Join us as we revisit some of the most iconic recordings from different bassists, past and present, discussing behind-the-scene insight and stories that made up some of the most revered albums of our time, all from a bass player's point of view. Now here's your host, international recording artist, Mr. Christian de Mesones, aka Big New York.
Celebrating over 40 years making music for the masses, Raven's latest release, Metal City, has blown away fans and critics alike. Today, we speak with the founder, songwriter, and bass virtuoso, John Gallagher. Welcome to We Sing the Bass Electric.
I'm happy to be here, Christian. Good to see you, man.
Can you believe it? Your debut album was released almost 40 years ago. It blew away so many fans of hard rock and metal. Obviously, the magic is still there. Has the songwriting process remained the same over the years?
Well, it's changed slightly. I mean, you got to understand that we were like maybe 6 and 7 years old when we did that record. I pick up a guitar and play a riff and go, oh, that sounds good. And we record it. And, you know, I'll either work on it there and then or come back to it later. And if it's, you know, got something going for it, run it down and see where it goes. And, you know, it's just got to have that spark, that energy, something that makes you want to, you know, bang your head or jump around. If it's that kind or something that's got some drama in it, you know, you got to work with that. So over the years, I mean, you know, technology has been our friend. I remember when the 4-track cassette players came out, and that was like, wow, that was like a revelation. That would be, geez, what, 83, 84, and you had the Fostex, and you were able to, you know, put down a track and put down something to complement it and, you know, like play with stuff like that. I must have burned through about 3 or 4 of them over the years.
Yes, I remember that process. Yes.
Yeah.
I've always dug your approach on the bass guitar. You're a big fan of melody and not afraid of incorporating multi-string instruments to achieve your vision. How did that influence come about?
Well, I was influenced by a lot of really cool bass players. I grew up at a time where, you know, looking back, it was astounding how many great players there was. And even right before I'd actually started playing, I mean, these things went into my head. Andy Fraser from Free, what a genius player. So young, but so amazing. What's his name? Ronnie Lane from The Faces. Great melodic bass player. Gary Thane, John Wetton, Trevor Boulder, Greg Lake, Chris Squire, Entwistle, you know, all these people. And we were lucky to see a lot of the bands at our hometown in Newcastle, England, small hall. And you'd get to see these people up close and personal, you know, rather than nosebleed at a stadium with binoculars, you know. We could actually sit there and go, oh, there's Bob Daisley. What is he doing? How's he doing this? What's he playing through? Oh, this is cool, you know. Multi-string thing, well, I came from Tom Peterson. I'd read about him and thought, oh, I like that, because I was playing octaves to fill out the sound and chords and stuff. And that sounded like a brilliant way of pulling that off. And then saw them play the Newcastle Mayfair. And, you know, they had a couple of parts where he was playing high up the neck and playing little riffs. And it was like, oh, you could do finger picking on this. This would be great. And there was no 12 strings commercially other than Hamer, but I got an Ibanez 8-string and used that on a couple of tracks of our first album. And I traded that in for a Kramer XL8, which I know you have a variety of that yourself there. And that's one of the
Yes.
best playing 8 strings you can get. And I used that for, 15 years. So that's all over our second album. And it's just a great sound. It sounds like a bulldozer distorted, but if you play clean with a bit of chorus and echo on, it's majestic sounding. And you can play these arpeggios and I could take over the role of bass and picked guitar for a couple of quiet songs or quiet parts, like Tyrant of the Airways, for example, where I'm playing an arpeggiated figure and my brother soloing on top of it. And it was just like a new sound, a whole different approach,
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that sound, and I do remember I can relate to what you're telling me because back in the day, we had shows that were like $5 to see three bands, and you would see something like a triple bill with Cheap Trick and UFO and Rush as the headliner and right up front. And so you would really learn, I guess, that was groundbreaking. I mean, so you think about Tom Peterson, this is 77 coming out, 76. And then you think about like Greg Lake. I remember seeing Greg Lake in his Scorpion Alembic 8-string, which I thought was the most incredible sound I've ever heard live. And so, yeah, and I can hear that in your influence. I really think it's a really cool thing um, that you bring to the table. Let's go back to your very first recording, Rock Till You Drop. Tell us about your first big break and what it was like during those early days for the band.
Well, we were playing the clubs and pubs in Northeast England, and pub gigs, and then we moved on to the working men's clubs, which was both of them were really the same thing. It was entertain us or die, tough audiences, but if they liked you, they let you know, and you'd have fans for life. I still have people that come to those shows. They'll come to see us when we come and play Northeast England. So we learned our trade, and from watching the aforementioned bands at the City Hall and whatever, you'd see which bands went over well or which didn't, and why they didn't go down. And I remember seeing Bad Company at the height of their fame, 1976. And I was ready to walk out after 2 songs. It was dreadful. They didn't care. They just didn't care. It was lame. All the guitar tones were like clean. They were bored. I mean, you closed your eyes, it sounded okay. Paul Rodgers is a phenomenal singer, of course, but it was just, nah, this is not what it's about. People would cut their right arm off to be where they were right there, and they didn't care. And of course that was 77, 78, 79. You started seeing all these guys in bands who were obviously out of their face on drugs. that was half the problem, unfortunately. But our work ethic has always been kill, 100%, bleed, leave it all on the stage every time, So our first break was we were playing a club in Newcastle, and the manager of another local band who just put out a single, the Tigers of Pantang, he came up and said, "How would you like to do a single for Neat Records?" And we were like, "Let me think about it." Yes, because let's do that. You got to understand, where we were in Newcastle, it's like being in Nebraska or Iowa compared to LA or New York. I mean, you had no chance of putting a record out or anything. So to have that opportunity was unbelievable. And because the Tigers of Pantang single, they were smart. They'd sent it off to the major music publications in London, and they actually liked it and promoted it. Same happened with ours. Ours got played on Radio 1, the BBC in England, and Ozzy heard it and said, "Who's this? This is great. I want those guys to open for me." So, like a month after the single's out, we're playing 4 dates with the Blizzard of Oz. We get a gig at the Marquee with Iron Maiden. We're playing down in London with Angel Witch. And, it just exponentially took off and just went crazy,
You were really at the right place at the right time. I mean, 1980 and 1981 were groundbreaking years for hard rock and metal. And your first album was released in '81 before Metallica, Anthrax, and Slayer. So How comfortable are you being labeled the godfathers of thrash metal? Do you feel all right with that statement? What's your feelings about that?
Oh, they can call me whatever they want as long as they pay me. I don't
I got you. I got
We've,
you.
we've definitely got a handle on that. We were one of the first bands to come out and play really energetic and fast, and with abandon, put it that way. So yeah, a lot of bands took what we were doing and maybe left the melody and the songwriting behind a little bit, and it morphed into bum ba da bum ba da bum ba da bum ba, all the way through. But yeah, we were definitely one of the first. I wouldn't say we were the first, but you know, music changes and it gets passed on from. We took it all from the bands we loved. The Judas Priests, the Montrose, the Deep Purple, the Led Zeppelin, blah blah blah. Took all the fast, the energetic parts of that, and made our own blend, and went on to sell that all around the world.
Speaking of, worldwide domination, I mean, I do remember when you came on the scene for the first time here in America, you were actually featured in something that we had Friday night videos, and we had a bunch of video programs. And I do remember the On and On video that came from your commercial success here in America with the release of Stay Hard. Were you happy with the album? I mean, were you under any pressure from your new label, Atlantic, to produce a more commercial sound?
No, not that album. There was pressure on the second album we did with them, but Stay Hard was done. It was recorded before Atlantic was even really in the mix. It was, well, 90% done. There was interest from them, and they'd mentioned they would love to hear a redo of Hard Ride. They thought that
Mm,
was a great song. So we redid it, which was a dumb idea because it's not as good.
mm.
It's a lot tamer, put it that way. But that was the only pressure on that. I mean, it's you listen to All for One, the previous album, and then Stay Hard. A lot of the songs could be interchangeable. They could have been on either album. It doesn't sound quite as bombastic and as heavy, uh, mainly because we didn't do it all the way through with Michael Wagner. We called him in halfway through to save it. We'd been recording it with us live sound engineer, and it wasn't really cutting it. So we brought Michael in, we redid a whole bunch of stuff and, remixed it. But those songs were great, great songs. We cut some new ground. The instrumental on there, the bottom line, is hilarious. It's got the horns on. It was totally different. It was new. And the songs were killer live. We had a hell of a great time doing that. It was when it come to the next album that the heavies stepped in, and there was a lot more pressure to lean towards the commercial aspects of things, and it just didn't work because it's not us. You've got to be true to yourself, and we were naive, young, and stuck in a country where people basically feeding us. We were, two pennies to rub together, and we had to step back after that and just say, you know what? No, we're not doing this. Let's do an EP, which was the Mad EP, and basically get back to what we do best. And we've been doing that ever since.
Back at that time, if you remember, were you really financially struggling? I mean, you seem to, at least from my perspective, I guess with the Stay Hard album, you, I guess you were on top of the world from my perspective. But was that a really tough time for you? Were you struggling financially? Were you on a per diem? Then your
Oh
managers or the
yeah,
record label give you
yeah. I
just
mean, we
enough to
were
live on?
we were on a per diem, very little money, and we were staying up in upstate New York in a house that was costing us like what, $100 a month or something crazy like that, which was ridiculous. So we didn't really want for anything. But all the money that came in was either going into other people's pockets or going into equipment or going into the stage show. Because I mean, we were breaking stuff pretty much as quick as we could buy it, you know.
Mhm.
Funnily enough, Steve Kaufman, who worked at ESP Guitars at the time, he loved it, and he just kept giving us more guitars to smash. He thought it was great.
Um,
These are times that will never come again. The new guy came in, and it was like, "Can you sign this receipt for this guitar?" And you owe us $500. And me and Mark signed it and looked at each other and went, "Yeah, I guess we're done here."
Speaking around that time, one of my favorite compositions is "Pray for the Sun," and your finger picking style of open chords on the eight string is something that always found quite alluring. Some equate this sound and style with lead guitar rather than bass. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, that's a cool piece. It's a strange altered scale with a trailing G on it on the eight string. No, it's not lead guitar. It's its own instrument on that. It's not guitar, it's not bass, but it's a bit of both on that. And that's got some cool chords and stuff on it on the bridge part of that really worked out nice. And that was all written on the eight string, obviously. But the eight string, you can play bass on it. You can do those kind of chordal things. And I have it strung really light, so I can play lead guitar on it too if I want to.
And I guess part B to that question would be, your technique includes the incorporation of double stops, power chords, tapping, of artificial harmonics, the use of distortion, effects with feedback. And I do remember seeing you live at the Ritz, and I was blown away when you were using that Explorer with the tremolo bar and the control of your feedback with the whammy bar was so cool. It reminded me of Jimi Hendrix. I was really, really impressed. How did you come up with that style? Was that just something that you came about early in your development as a musician?
Well, I remember when we got our first guitars, I had an Ibanez kind of a jazz copy. It was like a medium scale bass. Wasn't a bad bass. And my brother had this terrible Telecaster knockoff that had a kind of vibrola tailpiece, whammy bar, kind of like a Bigsby type of thing. And I would play that and go, and go, the bass guitar should have one of these. This would be good. So I always wanted one. And I finally found a guy at the repair shop at our favorite music store. A new guy came in. I thought, I need a whammy bar for my bass. Could you make one? And he said, yeah, I think we could do that. And we sat down and drew a few ideas. Let's take a block and we'll make a plate and take some bass bridges and put it on. And yeah, I can do this. Give me a week. Put it together. I gave him the bass. Ta-da, all set. We kept breaking bars. So we got a screwdriver, chrome vanadium screwdriver, and made a bar that wouldn't break. And I was off to the races. And then I added a bridge pickup on the bass, and he accidentally put in an EMG 81 guitar pickup. And I played through, we had a AC30 in the repair shop. And I'm like, oh, this sounds honky and no real low end and real peaky and middly. So I just reached over to the gain and cranked the amp, and it just went, I'm like, oh, leave it. So I've always had a guitar pickup in the back of that ever since. It's changed because EMG 81s don't like being smashed around. They kind of break, unfortunately. But I've got a X2N 7-string guitar pickup in there at the minute. Great. It just
Wow.
kicks ass. And it's always, for the solo stuff, I always just wanted to go off and basically do all the crazy stuff guitar players do, but do it a little differently, You have articulation, you can bend notes, you can put feeling into what you're doing rather than bump, 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 hitting the notes. And, I've got a big, noisy, loud sound. But, the bass, it's kind of uncharted territory. Even now, there's a lot of cool things you can do. So I'm having fun finding them out.
And speaking of distortion, which you use, What pedals do you use live versus in the studio? Are they the same?
Well, I'm using this one live, which is a Boss ME80. Uh, and I've used it in the studio, but the last couple of albums have been, I think Extermination we had like 4 runs. We had a DI into a couple of distortion boxes. I had a guitar amp running, and we just kind of blended it all till it sounded good. On the new album, Metal City, it was actually an altered guitar amp sound on a Kemper. We plugged into a Kemper, and that sounds good. A bit more bottom end, a bit more gain. We're set. We got the guitars and bass guitar sound in like 2 minutes. It was ridiculous, and it sounds great. And then, for little solo parts and whatever, we'd crank the gain or maybe put a few effects on or what have you. But I've used just about every effects unit there is, and it still sounds like me. So that's the important part, I guess.
Well, lately, one big thing that I've noticed about you is that you seem to have this huge social media imprint. You've been sharing your riffs and your playing style live on almost a daily basis on Facebook. What is your daily or regular practice routine? And if so, what do you focus on?
I just play. This has been good discipline-wise, doing these, what I call the noodle videos, which I just hit 190 days in a row yesterday. Pretty wild.
Wow. Wow.
Because it's like, okay, I'll plug in and play something and say, oh, okay, this is cool. Or I'll set up some weird effect. Because there's so many cool effects in here with the slow gear, where it, like a volume swell, and you combine that with whatever else, chorus, pitch shifting, whatever. You can do some crazy stuff. But on the musical side, I don't know, you look at Facebook or whatever, and people will mention music, or there was all these memes for Sound of Music, right?
Mhm.
With Julie Andrews and taking the mickey out of somebody. I'm like, oh, I remember Jacko used to play "The Hills Are Alive," and stuff. What else
Yes.
is on that? And then there was a skit with the Chim Chimney of Mary Poppins. I thought, ooh,
Yes.
that sounds a bit like a Tori Amos song as well. So I figured out the chords for that. And then Zeppelin, I've done the Rain Song, 10 Years Gone, Tangerine on bass.
Mm.
Great. Even Stairway to Heaven, two-handed to get half the notes in and all that. It's a challenge. It's fun. So it just... So I'll play, I'll work on stuff, and stuff will just come up and go, ooh, that's interesting. But you'll often learn from trying to play some of these pieces of music which have got really nothing to do with the bass guitar.
Mhm.
So you have to stretch to make it work, and then you'll learn new chordal patterns, and you never stop learning. That's what's cool about it. You never stop learning. And the other cool thing is there's always somebody worse than you, but there's always somebody better than you. So the important thing is for you to be better tomorrow than you are today and the day before. So that's always been my thing, to try and do what I do better than I did it the day before.
That is great advice, and what I like about you sharing your impromptu Facebook sessions with us is that you'll go after maybe a standard, a jazz standard. I remember you playing The Shadow of Her Smile or
Right, yeah. I
Moon
did
River.
Moon
That's it.
River,
Yes.
Philadelphia by Neil Young, a couple of Tori Amos songs, all kinds of weird stuff. Stuff that's got a good melody, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Melody is king, man. Let's talk about your latest release. Now, the band has gone through various drummers in its 40-year career. Your latest release, Metal City, has some serious balls to the wall drumming. Tell us when the recording of this album started and whether COVID-19 made it more difficult to complete the album.
Well, that's our new drummer, Mr. Mike Heller, who's absolutely phenomenal. He has scary technique, and he's been a real shot in the arm, him coming into the organization, as they say. So he joined in 2017, and almost immediately we had all these songs, and we said we want to do an album. And he said, give me a couple of tracks and I'll record the drums at my place. And we were like, oh, we are so used to doing it the old school way. And he says, well, give me the tracks. I'll show you what I can do. And we were blown away at what he'd done on these 3 songs, and just said, here's the rest. Go, do your thing, go crazy. We can always dial it back, or we can always change it. But, you know, and 99.9 of everything he did, we were just blown away and went, awesome. And if he changed it radically, it was in a good way, to a point, well, okay, we'll alter what we're doing, you know, to make it fit. And, you know, he put in, I mean, there's blast beats on a couple of parts, which I would never have thought of or wanted in a million years, but it works. And that's what it's all about, taking elements and bringing it in, incorporating it and changing it, and you come up with something new, you know. So, you know, he puts that part in right on the bridge on Human Race, where he's going, but we're playing rang, 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 big open chords. It works with a strong melody on top of it. If everyone was going, rah, 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 it wouldn't sound as appealing, you know. And then we went and recorded the bass and the guitar and the vocals with our old friend Michael Wagner at his studio in Nashville. And, you know, it's always fun working with Michael. It's been, geez, it was like 20 years since we'd worked with him previously. And it was a joy. It was so much fun. It was cool.
I think the album is a testament to whatever is in the Gallagher bloodline, because it's just, it's rare to see a band hang in there for this long, but then also continually to improve on their sound and their technique. And even though the magic is there, the songwriting principles are still there that makes up the Raven sound. I just think Metal City is probably your best album to ever. I mean, as far as production wise, as far as songwriting, as far as playing, I'm telling you, man, I'm speechless. I would love to say, hey, you know, when I finally grow up, man, I would like to achieve that level of success. That's pretty impressive.
That's real success. And I mean, we're very proud of the record. Again, for a band that's been around as long as we have, to come up with what I think as well is our best record, it makes a real statement, you know. And the cool thing is, I mean, we wrote 35, 40 songs for this album, and there's some great songs in between doing that. And now we're still writing. We're always writing. We just know the next one is we're going to have to raise the bar again. And that's what makes it great, you know. There's always that challenge. You've always got to try and one up yourself. So it's a great place to be, you know. We're very happy with it.
Well, before we end our conversation, I'd like to have a little fun with you. So I created this something different because, you know, I've done my research on you. Besides, you know, being a fan of yours for so many years, I want to do something that's not out there in social media. So I created something like the world according to John Gallagher. So I'm going to present you with 2 different topics, an A and a B, and
Okay.
you choose what you relate to the most. Okay, your
Okay.
preference. Are you ready?
Let's
So
do it.
my first one is Star Wars or Star Trek.
That's Star Trek, because you know you can't do sight gags on the radio.
Oh, I feel you. I'm a Star Trek baby too. My next one is Hammer Horror or Universal Monsters.
I gotta go Hammer Horror. That's what we used to hide behind the couch watching. Christopher Lee,
Yes.
Peter Cushing, all that good stuff. Yeah.
Yes. I'm a big Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing fan. As a child, I went to all those movies. I remember seeing Dracula Has Risen from the Grave with the Valley of Gwangi doubleheader. So
What
yes,
a double bill.
what a double bill. So I'm with you on that. Okay. Next one is fast food, pizza or tacos?
I'm talking to a New York man here. I've got to go pizza.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I think pizza is like the one food that I personally can eat 3 times a day and not get sick of. So
There's a place in my heart for tacos, but I'll go pizza. There you go.
okay. How about this question? Flat wound strings or round wound strings?
Oh, wash your mouth out with soap there, boy. Round wound, because they can do it all, and flat wound or one trick ponies. Not my thing. I remember as a kid going and looking at these great bass guitars, and they had these horrible flat wound strings on. They were half an inch off the fretboard, and they had a mattress jammed under the horrible ashtray cover on the back of the bridge.
That's right.
And if you ask them to play, you go dum dum dum. It's like, what is this? Where's the drang? So I know there's a lot of people swear by them and love them, but I'm not one of them.
I relate to that also because I do remember trying to do some Stanley Clark lines on my Fender Precision that was strung up with labella flat wounds, and boy, did that sound horrible. So yes,
Yeah.
so I
If
agree with you.
if you wind the tone off, it's very dark, it's very defined, and I guess it works. But with a tone up to try and do anything, there's always this sticky little click,
A
which
clackety clack. It's
annoys.
a clack.
You listen to all
Yes.
the late 60s where the bass guitar is really loud, and you hear this clink, 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 clink. It's this sticky click, I call it.
All right, here's another one. Precision or Thunderbird?
Oh, it's a tough one. It's a tough one. I grew up on Precision. I gotta go Thunderbird, but because I'm rocking Thunderbirds right now, so we'll go Thunderbirds. Even though my Explorer is basically a Precision when I'm playing it normally, it's got a split coil on it. It just sounds like the best Precision you ever heard.
Okay, I got you. What about festivals versus arena?
The cool thing about festivals is that it's a level playing field. There's a stage and there's an audience, and 90% of the bands that are there, there's no lights because it's usually during the day. So with a level playing field, that's a red rag to a bull for us. We can go out there and kill. We can go do our thing, absolutely. And it's just like, I've got the same tools you have, but this is what we did with it. An arena, if you're headlining, it's nice. Arena gigs, especially, are just so easy when you're playing at that level. If you're opening, union crew. I mean, even the crew don't do anything. It's all just brought in, set up, and you walk on and play. So I'll go with festivals because it's always fun to play to a brand new audience, and most of them may not even know who you are, but you've got the opportunity there to break some heads and get new converts.
That's interesting. I would think that arena would be a better choice personally, only because when you're dealing with a festival, you don't really have time to do a sound check.
So a line check, couple of minutes, it's all working, off and running. And we're a 3-piece. I mean, if you can't mix a 3-piece, come on.
Yeah.
Within 10 seconds, you should be able to have it where it's sitting just right. And Anything, if it sounds bad after that, it's sabotage.
All right, I got two more for you. All right. British Steel or Back in Black?
We're taking too much for granted.
Yes.
I mean, I love Brian. Brian's from my hometown. I love AC/DC, but British Steel was the one for me back then, definitely.
Yeah, I remember playing every single song, side A and side B, over and over again. I loved every song on the album. And what I really dug is the fact that Ian Hill had a spotlight on the Rage. I mean, I thought that was, first of all, you don't think of Judas Priest with having Ian Hill doing anything bass related except that song. And I believe he had an 8-string intro on Defenders of the Faith. I forgot the name of that song.
Love Bites.
Love Bites, yes.
Yeah.
But he really
down on he had a cool 8-string double neck. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Do that. Yeah. But Ian plays some great stuff on Sad Wings of Destiny and occasionally on Sin After Sin. But by the time he got to British Steel, yeah, that was the one song. And it's like Priest are playing reggae and they make it work. And it's that evil reggae that I love. Yes. Do you remember Roxy Music?
Yes, I do.
The Bogus Man. They had a 10-minute song called The Bogus Man. That was the evilest reggae song. It was about like somebody chasing you down the street at night to kill you. And it's down, weird. So that's almost that kind of feel. It's very cool.
Wow, that's a good reference. Okay, my last one to you, and probably the most important one. Stay Hard or Metal City?
Well, we got to go with the Metal City. Metal City's the real deal. And it's, everyone's going to say that. It's our new album. It's the best thing we've ever done. Don't take it from me. Go and listen to it. And then tell me about it afterwards.
Well, you know what? Do you remember that show that Eddie Trunk was hosting, that metal show? I remember that he had Peter Criss on one time, and what blew me away about that episode was that he asked Peter to put the Kiss albums in order. So if you were to put your Raven albums in order, even though there are a lot of them, I guess just tell me, what would your top 4 Raven albums be according to John Gallagher? What would be your favorites?
Oh, off the top of my head, it would be Metal City, All for One, Wiped Out, Rock Until You Drop. Some variant of that,
Okay. I'm glad you mentioned Rock Till You Drop, because I think that the magic that was displayed on that album, even though some people can criticize maybe some of the audio on it or the mix on it, I still think the playing and the rawness of that album is like pure gold. It's pure magic,
Well, that's why those records are special. All for One's got slightly better production values because we actually spent money on it. But Rock Until You Drop and Wiped Out were done on a shoestring budget. But the songs are great, the playing's great, the attitude and the feel is great. And that, that's more important. There's so many records that have got wonderful sounds and audio, and it's in one ear and straight out the other because there's no substance to it whatsoever,
Well, let me tell you, I had a great time speaking with you today. I found out a couple of things about you I didn't know, even though there's so much about John Gallagher on the internet. I mean, Google you and oh my God, you're on so many different platforms, but I feel like I captured something unique with you today. I hope you enjoyed spending your afternoon with me, and thank you so much for supporting my brand new podcast, We Sing the Bass Electric. Have a great day, John.
Absolutely. Thank you, Christian. Cheers, mate. Bye.